Hello and welcome to another Warhammer Renaissance battle report between myself, Jake, and Casey. So on this evening we played a 1600 point battle using the tournament rules, meaning characters single models could only be up to 400 points. I gave Skaven a shot. The Grey Seer is definitely my favorite general, and a little hard to fit in at 400 points, but I actually really liked the build I came up with. The Dispel Magic Scroll, which seems indispensable, and then the Warpstone Charm, which I think is pretty indispensable on a Grey Seer because it allows you to use your Warpstone tokens without fear of turning into a Chaos Spawn. And then most likely you'll not need it for those, and then it's going to be useful on a Grey Seer for a crucial dispel roll or a spell effect. So I think it's a must take for a Grey Seer. That only leaves you with 25 points if you have a 400 point limit. So I went Power Scroll and Sword of Might, which I thought worked pretty well and creates a pretty well-rounded character. Otherwise, the rest of my list is, for me at least, a pretty standard Skaven list, kind of one of most things in the book. With the mainstay clan rat rule, I tend to just take one unit of clan rats and then kind of one of, most of the other options. So, liked my list. Casey kind of went for a fairly balanced Empire list, I guess I'll say. He unfortunately forgot his halflings, the models, so he had to kind of make a last minute swap, and I think he swapped in the dwarf crossbowman, and the points aren't quite right, and I'm not sure you can have the hot pot without a unit of halflings, but we just did what we could, and it was a good battle, so I hope you enjoy. Okay, we have another 1600 point battle. This time it is Skaven facing off against Empire for a Take the Hill. We have the offset deployment this battle, and so on the go through the armies on the Skaven side, Giant Rats, Giselle teams, unit of Clan Rats with a Grey Seer, slaves, Storm Vermin, a Warp Fire Thrower, Censer Bearers, and Plague Monks, and some Gutter Runners. And on the Empire side,
got 10 Reiksguard Knights, a hero on a Pegasus, Halfling Hot Pot, Pistoliers, a unit of 10 Dwarves with a level 3 Grey Wizard with a Warrior Familiar, a unit of Halberdiers with a detachment of 8 Great Swords. The Halberdiers have a Warrior Priest and an Empire Lord, who's the general with them. And then there's the Hellblaster and a unit of 10 Reiksguard Foot Knights.
and the list is a little bit messed up because Casey had halflings, but he forgot to bring the models, so the hot pot obviously couldn't really take without halflings, but we just had to make the best of this situation. So the other halflings are presumably back at camp with sausage poisoning. Okay, just finished up turn one. So Empire went first and moved up on this flank. The hot pot fired and shot well wide of its target of the Storm Vermin, but took out 6 clan rats instead. And then on the Skaven turn, units in the middle basically moved up, and Giant Rats swung around. The Gutter Runners stayed concealed in the forest, and the Giselles shot at the Pistoliers and took 3 out. Amazing round of shooting for them. Alrighty, just had Empire turn 2. So the hero on the Pegasus swooped down and killed a few rats, and it was a tied combat. The Knights sallied forth. Pistoliers are being sneaky. The hot pot landed right between, just catching the corner of the slaves and Storm Vermin, and killed 1 of each. dwarf crossbows took a few other storm vermin out, and Hellblaster moved, and Reiksguard moved kind of into the woods a bit. And then in the magic phase, Casey cast Pit of Tarnus on the storm vermin, but it was destroyed by the Grey Seer, and then the Grey Seer ate a bunch of Warpstone, tried to cast Crack's Call on the Hellblaster, but it was dispelled, and then used Warp tokens to cast Madness on this guy, and Casey used a Dispel Scroll. And then I had the cool idea, I thought, of using my Power Scroll to cast Curse of the Horned One on the Hellblaster, thinking I could, get the crew some of them turn into Skaven and fighting each other, but upon further review, the spell says it can only be cast on a regiment, so had to change that plan. All right, just had Skaven turn 2. So on this flank, the Plague troops assumed a defensive position with the Censer Bearers providing a smoke screen to the knights. The Storm Vermin popped up on the hill, and the Clan Rats also moved boldly forward with the slaves in tow. The plan was to have the Gutter Runners kind of like block the Hellblaster, but Casey had moved it over, and I didn't really realize. I think I just assumed since they're fast, they'd be able to block it, but anyway, they weren't. So they threw their throwing stars at it and killed one crew. I figured in the magic phase I'd have a good shot at it with Crack's Call, and then I'd even have Madness as a spell I could cast, I guess, on one of the crew, and then the 2 crew would be fighting, but no such luck. Casey used a Drain Magic on my first spell, and his wizard did lose a level in a spell, so he's actually down to 1 spell because 1 was destroyed, just lost the other one. The other big action was this guy killed 4 rats this time, broke them, and chased them down. The Jezzails took out a knight, and those are the highlights. So just had Empire turn 3. So the Hellblaster shot this unit. It was within 12, got 4 barrels off before it misfired. Took out 14 clan rats, leaving just 10. And then the Reiksguard moved forward. Even more dramatically, the Pegasus Rider with the Berserker Sword charged the Gutter Runners and was felled by their stand and shoot poison thrown weapons. Let's see. Hot Pot misfired. Pistoliers shot down a Censer Bearer. Knights more or less stayed in place. This unit moved back. The detachment kind of repositioned a bit. And the magic phase was a complete dud because Casey got all the powers and he only has 1 spell, and I got all the dispels, and so yeah, that was we both passed the start of the magic phase. All right, Skaven turn 3 proved to be an exciting one. So we'll start with the less exciting part. The Plague Priest left the Plague Monks so that they had to charge the Pistoliers who fled. So they the whole line moved over, and the Plague Monks were the Plague Censer Bearers were no longer blocking the Plague Monks from a charge. They shimmied over 2.5 inches, and then the Plague Priest came out of the unit and joined the Plague Censer Bearers to reconstitute the shield. Jezzails hit 2 knights, but their armor saved them both. In the middle, not too much movement really, kind of just stayed on the hill. The Gutter Runners charged the Hellblaster with the logic that they would, it already misfired, but they'd kill the crew and destroy the unit and cause panic checks. As you can see, that calculation yielded fruit. It was the Reiksguard Knights that were kind of expected to flee. They looked like they were maybe out of range of the general. They passed on a roll of a 6 anyways, but then Casey rolled an 11 for these poor guys. For a minute, we actually thought they were destroyed because they would have fled into the impassable terrain, but luckily we were in such disbelief, we checked the rules and realized that they would actually avoid the impassable terrain in this instance. So they are right at the table edge, and then the magic phase was also exciting. The Grey Seer first cast Madness on the wizard, and it did go off, but the roll off was a tie. So the wizard maintained his sanity. And then to test his resolve again, the Grey Seer used his power scroll to cast Curse of the Horned One. Chew! Ooh, warp dust, making me sneeze. Cast Curse of the Horned One. The dwarves proved pretty resilient to turning into Skaven. Only 3 turned. And then when it came to the roll-off for the wizard, it was a tie. I used my warp token to reroll, and I rerolled one lower, so with the +1 it was once again a tie. So the wizard narrowly evaded both madness and transformation into Skavenhood. So a real close call there. Casey is living on the edge, and it is Empire turn 4. All right, so Empire turn 4. So the big news is the Knights charged the Censor Rares and Plague Priest and just smashed through them and overran the Plague Monks. It was a really impressive knightly performance. The General's unit in the middle rallied. The Wizard shrugged off another Madness in the Magic phase. Apparently a very sane individual. The Pistoliers rallied. The Reiksguard are just trudging through the woods very slowly. And that's it. All right, just had Skaven turn 4. So the Knights did pretty narrowly. They definitely defeated the Plague Monks by 3. They just failed their break test by 1, so it was a close call. But the Knights triumphed and are now lined up against the Jezzails. The Skaven on the hill had kind of rotated to countercharge the Knights if different possibilities played out. And the Grey Seer hopped over to the Storm Vermin. He was actually thinking about Pestilent breathing the Knights, but they moved location. Let's see. The Gutter Runners and Jezzails collectively finished off the Pistoliers, and nothing happened in the Magic. And just to set the context for turn 5, so Skaven have 3 units on the objective, the hill. The Empire have this detachment in range of the hill. The main unit is a big unit is far away. These Knights are sort of slogging through the woods and definitely not going to reach that hill anytime soon. And the Knights, well, they're not facing the hill, but they could turn around if they can resist the temptation to charge the Jezzails. So see what happens. Certainly Skaven have the objective at the moment. All right, Empire turn 5. So the big move of this turn was the Great Swords charging the Stormvermin on the hill in the flank. I was not worried about this. For one, they kind of looked out of range, but for 2, I knew I could move my Grey Seer over and my guys would strike first, but I actually only killed 3. 1 died in the Magic phase, so there were still 5 in my flank, and they actually killed, what, 4? So they did awesome. So I actually we ended up tying the combat because I had high ground still. But if I had lost by 1 more, I would have been testing on leadership 6. So it was a really, really close call there. In the Magic phase, I shot a Crack's Call that went through the Wizard, a Dwarf, and 1 Greatsword, and killed a Greatsword and a Dwarf. And before that, Casey had cast Horn of Andar with Total Power. The Total Power was, I think, the last card in the Magic deck. And since this unit didn't have rank bonus, so they had to take a panic check because they're in combat. It's one of the effects of the Horn. And, the Grey Seer is leadership 7. And since the rank bonus was taken away, they didn't get their strength and numbers. So I had to test on leadership 7 and rolled a 6. So that was a huge moment of mercy. And that's the top of turn 5. Okay, so Skaven turn 5 just concluded. So there was some maneuvering to kind of anticipate a charge from the knights if there's a turn 6. Gisele's failed to down any knights. The gutter runners killed 2 foot knights with throwing stars. The great swords were sent running, and in the magic phase, a Curse of the Horned One went off on this unit. The wizard was turned into a Skaven along with 3 dwarves. So Casey, turn 6 roll.
We're up. There's a turn 6.
There's a turn 6. All right, here we go. Okay, so Empire turn 6. Basically, the knights charged. Slaves put up a fight, but they were steamrolled in the end, and the knights overran into the clan rats. And otherwise, pretty much non-consequential movement. Okay, we just had a photo finish for Skaven turn 6. So the knights faced off against these guys. An assassin popped out, did some awesome ninja-like attacks that were ultimately ineffective due to full plate armor, but it did distract the knights, and many of them missed their attacks. And a lowly clan rat, managed to fell a knight. The knights actually lost the combat and fled and were ran off the hill, which the Skaven claim uncontestedly. So that's the battle. So we haven't added up points yet, but with the objective being held by the Skaven, they definitely won by some margin. So thanks for watching. All right, Casey and I are hanging out in the post-battle lounge area. Casey, do you want to start us off with any reflections on the battle?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good battle. I think I felt mostly on the back foot a lot of the battle, but near the end, when I finally had the courage to send my knights forward and charge into the plague sensor bearers, which I probably should have done a turn earlier. That was good. They kind of broke that flank and almost, they kind of got in this position where it was possible they could have contested the objective on turn 6. Mm-hmm. Though somewhat unlikely. But yeah, that was pretty good, and I liked my army. Thought it was fun playing against the Skaven. We haven't done that in a while. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it really did come down to that knight unit at the end, because that unit of clan rats that were the final challenge for the knights, there was 9 clan rats, and then an assassin popped out. And they did have the sacred standard of the horned rat, so they were leadership 10, regardless of ranks. But you only killed 1 on the charge, and so you lost. But on average, yeah, we kind of were looking at the numbers, and you probably should have won, and the average outcome would have been them testing on 7. Yeah. And if they had broken and you had restrained pursuit, you would have been on the hill with the knights, and I would have been on the hill with my storm vermin at the end of the battle. Yeah. And then I think it would have just been a really close game.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have lost my knights.
Because when we calculated the points, I was up.
You were up by 500 or something?
No, only 300.
Okay.
Because didn't we when we calculated out, I won by 1100, and the hill was 800.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was only ahead by 300 with what we destroyed, and if your knights had still been around and that unit had been gone,
yeah, I think it would have been a draw.
It would have been a draw, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was pretty close to a draw.
Yeah,
but
there were some spots where I like my Reiksguard foot knights that just kind of trudged around in the woods.
Yeah.
The whole battle, that wasn't so great.
Yeah.
And my big halberdier unit failing the panic check definitely set them back, so they really couldn't.
Yeah, the unit was just out of the battle, basically.
Yeah, they couldn't contest the objective, which would have been quite helpful if just one of those units could have contested the objective. Or fought your not your clan rats, but the other ones.
Storm vermin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my basic
basically what I did ended up working, which was just moving towards the hill as fast as I could while like setting up, I don't know, an attempt at fending off the knights, which proved to be more of a speed bump than a wall, but it did sort of because like since I was up forward with both those units, which both would have been, I think, collectively too much for the halberdiers to handle, like that kind of caused you to stay back, and then obviously the failed panic test was more of a fluke, but the fact that I'd kind of rushed up to the hill first definitely served me well in the end, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I like that night unit. We were talking about it before we started recording, but it was kind of previously I had often taken like 6 knights or 7 knights with the Banner of Great Deeds, but just having 10 knights, it's not that many more points. It's like barely more points, and they're very durable. So like they're still effective after you kill a few. So that was really nice. I like that unit a lot. And I like the dwarf crossbowmen this battle. They're pretty good.
Knights are your MVPs though, for sure.
They're definitely my MVPs.
Who are my MVPs?
Probably the Storm Vermin or just your Grey Seer.
Yeah. Probably.
Gisele's were good, but they weren't like decisive.
No. Well, the Gutter Runners.
The Gutter Runners were great.
They actually might be the sort of MVPs point for point because they killed your Pegasus Rider.
Yep.
They made your Reiksguard wander to the woods.
Yep.
And waste the whole battle wandering in the forest.
Killed the Hellblaster.
And they killed the Hellblaster, which panicked.
And
your halberdier unit.
They actually, tracing it all back, they
were, and then they were all there at the end, just like throwing stars at foot knights and taking them out.
Yeah. I didn't really have a good way to deal with them because, I didn't have my halflings, and my wizard didn't have any magic missiles and didn't have the Doomfire ring, so I didn't have like a very good way to actually just delete that unit.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad it was kind of interesting magic-wise battle because we both. I mean, you lost spells pretty fast, so you really. I mean, I guess in that way it wasn't that interesting because you weren't casting much. The Horn of Andar was a cool spell.
That was sometimes pretty good.
Sometimes it was pretty.
Could have been pretty good.
Yeah. But my spells were kind of situational and like kind of unique, like getting. And I did make a mistake earlier where I had the range wrong for Course of the Horned One. I thought it was 24 and it's only 12. So we at one point like put the dwarves who had turned into Skaven back into the unit after realizing that I wouldn't have been able to cast it that time. But yeah, that was like a fun, unusual. Like I really don't think I've used that spell before, and it is against toughness 4 stuff. It's
not that good. But
it's not that good, but
it's not bad.
It's not bad. It did eventually turn. I mean, it's cool that it can kill a character in 1 dice roll.
Yeah.
The spell is actually surprisingly vague. If like it just says turn into Skaven, it doesn't say like clan rats.
Yeah, we assumed it meant just like clan rats with hand weapons.
Yeah, that seemed like the most default choice, but that was cool. Cracked Skull was a good spell to try against the Hellblaster. Madness.
Yeah, it forced me to use. I don't know if I used a Dispel Scroll or
you used a Dispel Scroll on Madness.
Yeah.
You used a Drain Magic maybe on Cracked Skull, which made you forget a spell.
Yep.
So yeah, Magic certainly had. I mean, Madness never went off, did it?
Well, it never caused me to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it went off, but you won the roll off every time.
Yeah, I think it went off twice, and I won the roll off.
Yep. Yeah, twice on your wizard, and you won the roll off post damage. So yeah. Well, thanks for the game. It was very fun. Definitely a game where the objective really, like the whole battle felt very focused on the objective, which was cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of some surprises. I felt a lot better than last battle about kind of foreseeing kind of movement stuff and keeping my army like kind of compact enough that stuff was protecting each other. I don't think my plan with the sensor bearers worked out well, but you did roll pretty well, so
really well, yeah.
maybe it was an okay plan.
I think on average it would have not gone quite as well for me. Like ultimately the outcome would be the same, but I probably would have lost a couple more nights.
I guess the thing too is like that since I had hatred, if just one sensor bearer had lived, I probably would have held.
Yeah.
Which would have been pretty. I don't know. Whatever. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But those nights were.
They
were just on fire. They crashed through 3 units before finally being slowed down. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.